So next up we have each candidate in the same order answering the question that they received in advance of the night's hustings, and if you didn't see the question on Facebook, it'll be up on the screen as each candidate is answering the question. So
I know these are, we try to be polite and comradely at these events, but I do think that we are in there is raw class war happening around us right now. I mean, you look at what happened with the P&O ferries workers. I mean, 800 workers laid off over Zoom. The CEO waltzes into Parliament and says, yeah, we broke the law, so what? And we do it again, right? And where does this arrogance come from, right? How are they getting away with this? And 20 years ago was the era of let's get rid of the public sector. Privatisation is what we need to do right now. And we've had 20 plus years of privatisation here in the north. Privatisation of public services, privatisation of the health service, privatisation of the housing executive. And that's why we have a crisis. So we have 45,000 people here in the north that can't get a house. We have 450,000 people can't get an appointment at the health service, and we have to understand why this has happened. And again, the 5 executive parties have a strategy that they've been working on publicly now for the last 20 years, which is to promote privatisation and to undermine public services. And how do we know that that's happening? There's an 800 million market now, a private healthcare market that's worth £800 million. Who owns that market? Care home bosses own it, big agencies own it, private insurers own it. They're sucking money out of our health service. They're undermining workers' rights. They're undermining standards in the health service. Now that doesn't just happen. That comes from a policy direction that has been set by the 5 main parties. The SDLP signed up with this. The Sinn Féin have signed up with this. This is not just the DUP. This has been the strategy now of the executive for 20 plus years. And so, it's the exact same thing with the housing stock. And Sinn Féin's last proposal was an attempt to hoodwink people into believing that they weren't going to install the full privatisation of the housing executive. But that's what it was. It was about splitting it into 2. And then one part of it would become, its obligations would be determined in the private market, which would open up, who knows what would happen down the line if there was a crisis and payments couldn't be fulfilled and so on. So I think that the underlying low wages here in the north, underlying the state of our public services, is that drive towards privatisation, which is why then, we have on the books, right, because people will come in now and say we stand up for workers' rights, right? Thatcher's anti-trade union laws have been on the books in Stormont now for 20 years. Nobody acted to try and devolve them until Eamon got elected, right? And that was the first thing that he did when he went into office. Jerry revived that when he got in. And unfortunately, the Assembly voted that down. There was lukewarm support from Sinn Féin and the SDLP, but let me be clear, when the SDLP spoke at the meeting, their MLA said, we're voting in support of this because it's got absolutely no chance of getting through. We don't support a lot of it, including the part which would allow smaller workplaces to organise, which is one of the big issues, because if you're in a workplace of less than 21 people, there's no automatic right to recognition from the point of view of an employer. And we prefer the social model in the south. Now that's the social model that Fianna Fáil have been promoting, which has been an absolute disaster in the south. So I think we have to challenge this whole, we have to take an axe to the root of privatisation. We have to go back to the idea that the public sector is good. We have to bring energy back into the public sector. We got to bring all them parts of the health service that have been privatised, domiciliary care, care homes, that to bring them back in, raise standards, put the funding back there, and raise workers' wages right along with it. As we know, people will talk about pay raises next year for health workers and social care workers, but they voted through, the executive has voted through every year pay cuts for health for nurses and social care workers. Thank you.